Tom had always been a man of business. As the CEO of a successful restaurant chain, he spent most of his time making decisions that affected hundreds of employees and customers. Every day was a whirlwind of meetings, emails, and plans for expansion. It was a life he had chosen years ago, a life that was demanding but rewarding. But recently, Tom had started to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Distant from the people who worked for him, distant from the kitchens that created the food his company was known for, and distant from the customers who walked through the doors of his restaurants. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had lost touch with what made his business successful in the first place, the people behind it. Tom often found himself sitting in his office, staring at the reports, and wondering if the company's growth had come at a cost. Had he become so focused on expansion that he was forgetting the little things, the things that made the company thrive? He knew he needed to reconnect, but he wasn't sure how. He couldn't just walk into a restaurant and start chatting with employees, not without them recognizing him immediately. No, he needed to do something different, something that would allow him to see his business from a fresh perspective. That's when the idea hit him. An undercover operation. He would go into one of his own restaurants, not as the CEO, but as a regular customer. No one would know who he was. No one would know his true identity. This would give him a chance to see things as they really were. He could observe, listen, and experience the business from the point of view of an everyday diner. He would find out if his company was truly the welcoming, family-oriented place he wanted it to be. It was a risky move, but Tom was no stranger to taking risks. He had built his empire from the ground up, overcoming obstacles and challenges along the way. This undercover assignment, he thought, would be just another step in ensuring his company's future. The day of the operation arrived, and Tom found himself standing outside one of his restaurants in a small, bustling neighborhood. He wore a simple jacket, jeans, and sunglasses, a far cry from his usual expensive suits. He even used a fake name, just in case. No one would recognize him this way. He hoped. Tom took a deep breath before entering the restaurant. The door chimed as he walked in, and the warm scent of freshly baked bread, garlic, and tomato sauce filled the air. The soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of silverware created a comforting, familiar atmosphere. It was exactly the kind of place people came to when they wanted a relaxed, enjoyable meal with friends or family. A friendly young waitress approached him as soon as he sat down. She had a warm smile and a look of genuine care in her eyes, something Tom hadn't seen in a while from his staff. "Hi there. Welcome. Table for one," she asked, holding a menu. Tom nodded, still adjusting to the idea of being an anonymous customer. "Yes, please," he replied, trying to sound like any other diner. She led him to a small booth by the window, where he could watch the bustling street outside. It was the perfect spot for people watching. As she handed him the menu, she asked, "Can I start you off with a drink?" "Just water for now, thanks," Tom replied, still scanning the menu. He was trying to make it look like he was carefully choosing his meal, but his mind kept wandering. He was thinking about how he was going to get the answers he needed, how he would figure out if everything in the restaurant was running the way it should. The waitress left him to decide, but Tom didn't pay much attention to the menu. His eyes were more focused on the people around him. He watched the cooks behind the counter, the way they moved quickly and efficiently, preparing plates with practiced hands. The servers, like the young waitress who had seated him, seemed to enjoy their work. They laughed with the customers, joking around and making them feel at home. As he sat there, observing, he couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. Years ago, when he had started the company, he had been just like these employees, working hard, passionate, and connected to every aspect of the business. Somewhere along the way, he had lost that connection. Now, it felt like he was on the outside looking in. The waitress came back with his water, smiling as she placed it in front of him. Have you decided what you'd like to order? Tom glanced at the menu, but truthfully, he wasn't hungry. His mind was elsewhere. I'll have the spaghetti, and could I get some garlic bread with that? Good choice, she replied. I'll put that in right away. As she walked away, Tom couldn't help but watch her. She moved with confidence, making her way through the tables with a natural grace. She greeted regular customers by name, exchanging quick pleasantries before moving on to the next. There was something about her that made Tom feel like he was in good hands. But there was more. As he watched her, he noticed how the other staff interacted with each other. There was a camaraderie here, something he hadn't seen in his corporate office for a long time. They seemed to work as a team, and it wasn't just about getting the job done. It was about making people happy, making the customers feel like they were part of something special. This was the feeling Tom had once wanted for his business, but somewhere along the way, it had been overshadowed by spreadsheets and profit margins. For the first time in a long time, Tom wondered if he had made the right choices. Were the people working for him really happy? Did they feel valued? Or were they just cogs in a machine, doing their jobs but not truly invested in what they were doing? His meal arrived, but Tom barely noticed. He was deep in thought. He stirred his spaghetti absent-mindedly, wondering how much he had lost sight of the very values he had built the company on. But what happened next, something small and simple, would change everything. Tom sat quietly, pushing his spaghetti around his plate, his thoughts swirling. The garlic bread beside him sat untouched, its warm aroma filling the air. His gaze wandered around the restaurant, noticing the way the other customers interacted with the staff, how comfortable they seemed. It was clear that the staff wasn't just doing their jobs, they were making connections. The friendly laughter and easy banter between them and the diners made the place feel like a home away from home. Tom suddenly felt a pang of guilt. How had his company lost that personal touch? How had he let things become so corporate, so impersonal? He had started with big dreams to create a business that felt like a family, not just another chain. But somewhere along the way, he had gotten distracted, lost in the numbers, the growth, and the endless meetings. He couldn't even remember the last time he had truly interacted with an employee, much less taken the time to understand what they were going through. As he stared into his half-eaten meal, a voice brought him back to reality. "Is everything all right?" the waitress, Sarah, asked with a smile. Her voice was gentle, but there was something in her tone that made Tom feel as though she could sense his inner conflict. Tom looked up, surprised by the question. He hadn't realized he had been lost in thought for so long. "Oh, yeah. Everything's fine. Just thinking," he replied, trying to sound casual, but feeling a bit embarrassed. Sarah seemed to sense his discomfort. She sat down across from him, uninvited but not unwelcome. "You looked like you were a million miles away," she said with a soft chuckle. "I know the feeling. Happens to me all the time." Tom was taken aback by her openness. It wasn't every day that someone, especially a waitress, would sit down with a customer like this. But there was something about Sarah that made him feel at ease. She wasn't just a server, she seemed to genuinely care about the people around her. "Yeah," Tom said, half smiling. "I guess I've been a little distracted lately." "I get it," she said. "Sometimes, when things get overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what really matters. But you can always find your way back, you know? It's all about balance." Tom studied her for a moment. There was wisdom in her words, something he hadn't expected from someone so young. He felt a strange sense of relief, like someone had just handed him a small piece of clarity in the middle of his confusion. "I think I've been so focused on growth and success that I forgot about the people behind it all," Tom admitted, his voice quieter now, almost hesitant. "The ones who are actually doing the work, day in and day out." Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "I think a lot of people forget that," she said, her voice carrying a hint of understanding. "But the thing is, the people who work here, myself included, don't do it for the paycheck alone. We do it because we care. Because we want to make people feel welcome, like they're part of something special. That's what keeps us coming back, even on tough days." Tom felt a lump form in his throat. For the first time in a long time, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for what his business was truly about. It wasn't about the sales or the bottom line, it was about the connections, the care, and the warmth that people like Sarah brought to the table every day. "I've been so focused on the big picture, I forgot about the small moments," Tom said quietly, almost to himself. Sarah smiled gently. "The small moments are the ones that matter the most. When you connect with people, when you make them feel valued, that's when you're really doing something right." Tom sat back, letting her words sink in. He had come here to observe his business, to see how things were really running, but he hadn't expected to learn this much in just one meal. Sarah's perspective had given him a glimpse into something he had been missing for far too long. Before Tom could respond, Sarah stood up to attend to another table. But as she walked away, she paused, looking over her shoulder with a smile. "If you ever need to talk, just let me know. I'm always here." Tom nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of gratitude. As Sarah moved through the restaurant, he couldn't help but think about how different things might have been if he had taken the time to listen to people like her sooner. Maybe his company wouldn't have become so detached. Maybe the heart of his business had always been right in front of him, but he had been too busy chasing after the wrong things to notice. He finished his meal in silence, his mind racing with the thoughts Sarah had sparked. By the time he stood up to leave, he felt like a different person. More awake. More aware of the things he had been overlooking. As he walked to the door, Tom found himself looking around the restaurant one last time. The staff, the customers, the atmosphere, it was all so real. So human. And in that moment, he realized that this was the soul of his business. Not the flashy marketing or the endless expansion plans, but the connections people made in places like this. He stepped outside into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. There was a lot of work to be done, he knew that. But for the first time in a long time, Tom felt hopeful. He wasn't sure what the future would hold, but he was certain of one thing: he had to get back to the basics. He had to reconnect with the people who made his business what it was. And it all started with listening, really listening to the ones who knew best. The days that followed Tom's visit to the restaurant were filled with meetings, reports, and more decisions about the future of the company. But no matter how busy he got, he couldn't shake the conversation he had with Sarah. Her words echoed in his mind, playing over and over like a quiet melody. "It's all about balance. The small moments are the ones that matter the most." It was strange he had spent so many years focused on growing his business, making it bigger and more successful, but now it felt like he had lost sight of what really mattered. How had it happened? When had the spark, the connection between his staff and customers, slipped through his fingers? The realization left him feeling more uncertain than ever before. Tom had always been a man who thrived on action. He wasn't the type to sit still for long. But for the first time in his career, he found himself at a crossroads. Did he continue down the same path, pushing for more growth, more profit? Or did he change direction, return to the roots of his company, and start focusing on the people on the team that made everything possible? He didn't have the answers yet, but he knew one thing for sure: he needed to go back to that restaurant. He needed to see Sarah again. There was something about her, her warmth, her understanding, that had struck a chord in him. It wasn't just about the food or the business. It was about the heart of it all. It was a Tuesday evening when Tom returned to the same restaurant. This time, he wasn't disguised as a regular customer. He wore his usual business attire, but he didn't care if anyone recognized him. He wasn't here to hide anymore. He was here to learn. The restaurant was quieter than the first time he visited, with only a few tables occupied by couples enjoying a peaceful dinner. The soft clinking of glasses and the hum of low conversation filled the air, giving the place a cozy, welcoming atmosphere. Tom walked in and was immediately greeted by the hostess. "Welcome." "How many?" she asked, scanning him with a warm smile. "Just one tonight," he replied, his voice calm but with an undertone of something different. He was here for more than just a meal this time. She led him to a table by the window, and as he settled into his seat, he looked around the familiar space. The same bright paintings hung on the walls, the same plants dotted the tables, and the same cheerful energy flowed from the kitchen. It was all so familiar, but now it felt different. Before he could get too lost in his thoughts, Sarah walked over. She recognized him immediately and smiled, though there was a slight hesitation in her eyes, as though she was unsure what to expect. "Back again?" she asked with a friendly grin. "I guess the spaghetti and garlic bread were good enough for a second visit." Tom smiled back, but this time, there was a depth to his expression. "Actually, I didn't just come for the food," he said, his voice thoughtful. "I came to talk to you." Sarah raised an eyebrow, clearly curious but not surprised. "About what?" she asked, leaning slightly against the edge of the table. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last time," Tom began, pausing for a moment as if searching for the right words. "About how it's all about balance. About how the small moments matter the most." Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "I'm glad you remembered. Those small moments, they add up to something bigger than you think. A kind word, a smile, the way you treat people, it all comes back in ways you might never expect." Tom leaned forward, his hands resting on the table. "I've spent so much time focusing on making my company bigger, expanding, getting more customers. But I think I forgot the most important part. The people. The ones who work here, the ones who support the business. I lost sight of that." Sarah's face lit up with a gentle smile. "It happens. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers and the growth. But the real success comes from how people feel when they walk through the door. That's what keeps them coming back." Tom let out a quiet breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. "I've been so caught up in the race to the top that I forgot about the foundation. I think I need to start again, from the ground up. Get back to those small moments, those connections." Sarah's eyes sparkled with understanding. "You're already on the right path. Sometimes, it's not about what you change, it's about how you see things. The way you look at your employees, your customers, the way you lead them. They're all part of the same story." For a moment, Tom was speechless. The conversation was so simple, yet so profound. It felt like Sarah was giving him the missing piece of the puzzle. He had always believed in building a strong foundation for his business, but now he understood that the foundation was made up of people, not just processes. "I think I need to reconnect with the people here," Tom said slowly. "Not just as the CEO, but as someone who truly understands what they do, why they do it." Sarah nodded. "That's exactly it. If you lead with heart, others will follow. And that's how you build something that lasts." Tom sat back in his chair, his thoughts racing. Everything he had been searching for seemed so clear now. It wasn't about fancy strategies or cutting-edge technology, it was about people. It was about creating an environment where everyone felt valued, heard, and cared for. And from there, the rest would follow. He was starting to see the business not as a company, but as a community. And that shift in perspective was everything. "I want to do things differently," he said, his voice filled with determination. "I want to make my company a place where everyone feels like family. Where every person is seen, heard, and appreciated." Sarah's smile widened, and she placed her hand gently on the table. "You've got the right mindset. You're already on your way. Tom couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rising within him. He wasn't sure how long it would take, or how hard the journey might be, but he knew one thing for sure: he was ready to change. For the first time in a long time, he was excited about the future. As Sarah walked away to attend to her duties, Tom sat quietly at his table, a feeling of peace settling over him. The world outside the window seemed brighter now, and for the first time in a while, Tom felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Tom spent the next few days in a daze. His mind was full of the conversation with Sarah, but it wasn't just the words that stuck with him. It was the feeling. The feeling that things could be different, that he could reconnect with what truly mattered. But as much as he wanted to make changes, he wasn't sure where to start. The idea of shifting the entire culture of his company felt overwhelming. Back in the office, the usual business routine continued. Meetings were scheduled, reports were filed, and numbers were discussed. But Tom couldn't focus. He found himself looking out the window more often, his thoughts drifting back to the restaurant. To Sarah. To the things she had said. He knew he had to do something, and soon. He couldn't keep going on like this pretending everything was fine when deep down, he knew something was missing. It was a Thursday morning when Tom made his decision. He was going to go back to that restaurant again, but this time, he wasn't just going as a customer. He was going to talk to Sarah again, but he wasn't just going to listen this time. He had a plan. He was going to ask her for advice. She seemed to have a way of seeing things that he hadn't even considered. Maybe, just maybe, she could help him find a way to change things. Tom arrived at the restaurant just as the lunch rush was beginning. The place was busy, with people chatting, servers moving quickly between tables, and the hum of conversation filling the air. The familiar warmth of the restaurant greeted him as he stepped inside. It felt like a second home, something he hadn't realized he had missed until now. Sarah spotted him as soon as he entered. She smiled, but this time, there was something different in her eyes. She recognized the look on his face, the same look he had when he first walked in, the look of someone searching for something. This time, though, there was a sense of calm behind it. Like he had found a piece of the puzzle, but hadn't yet figured out how it all fit together. "Back again?" she asked as she approached. Her voice was light, but there was an underlying curiosity. Tom gave a small smile, but it wasn't the usual kind of smile. It was more thoughtful, like someone who had come to a realization. "Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day. About balance, about the small moments. I think I want to make some changes. Real changes." Sarah's eyes softened. "What kind of changes?" Tom hesitated for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts. "I've been running my business for so long, always focused on growth, always chasing the next big thing. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started it in the first place. I wanted to create something that mattered to people, something that felt personal. I think I lost sight of that." She nodded, understanding. It's easy to get caught up in the bigger picture, but the truth is, the small things, how you treat your team, how you treat your customers, those are the things that build lasting success. Tom paused, taking in her words. "That's exactly it," he said, almost to himself. "The people behind everything. I've been thinking a lot about my staff, about how they might feel working in this company. I've never really stopped to listen to them, to understand what they need or want." Sarah's smile grew. "That's a good start. People need to feel valued. They need to know that their hard work is noticed. When they do, they'll work harder, and they'll care more about the company's success." Tom took a deep breath. "But where do I start? How do I change everything? I can't just wave a magic wand and make it all better." Sarah's expression became serious, but still kind. "You don't have to change everything at once. Start small. Start by showing your team that you care. It could be as simple as asking them how their day is going, or recognizing the little things they do well. People appreciate it when they're seen. And when they're seen, they'll want to do more. Tom nodded slowly. He had always believed in the importance of recognition, but had never truly made it a priority. Maybe that was the first step he needed to take: acknowledge his team, understand them, and show them that they mattered. I think I've been too focused on trying to be a leader in the traditional sense, Tom said, looking down at the table. But I'm starting to realize that leadership is more about connection. It's about being human, not just a boss. Sarah smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. Exactly. People don't want to follow someone who just tells them what to do. They want to follow someone who listens, someone who understands them. Tom's mind was racing now, filled with possibilities. He could feel the excitement building inside of him. This was it. This was the direction he needed to go in. It wasn't about numbers or strategy, it was about people. It was about creating a place where everyone felt like they were part of something meaningful, something bigger than themselves. Thank you, Sarah, Tom said, his voice sincere. I don't think I would have figured this out if it weren't for you. You've really opened my eyes. Sarah shrugged modestly. I'm just telling you what I've learned along the way. But I'm glad I could help. Tom sat back in his chair, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a clear sense of purpose. He knew there was a lot of work ahead of him, but he wasn't scared. This time, he wasn't going to focus on the bottom line or the next big project. This time, he was going to focus on the people who made everything possible. As he stood up to leave, Sarah gave him a final smile. Good luck. I think you're on the right path. Tom smiled back, feeling a renewed sense of hope. I'm going to do my best. And as he walked out of the restaurant, he knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but it would also be the most rewarding one of his life. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change for Tom. What had started as a conversation over garlic bread had evolved into a deep shift in how he viewed his business. Every day, he thought about what Sarah had told him: it's about the people. Start small. Start with connection. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had spent too long in the shadows of spreadsheets and reports, thinking numbers could measure everything. But now, he was learning that it was the small, human moments that truly made a difference. Tom's first step was to do something simple yet powerful. He decided to personally thank every member of his team, starting with the kitchen staff. For years, they had been the unsung heroes of his business, working tirelessly behind the scenes. But in the past, Tom had hardly ever stopped by to acknowledge their hard work. One Thursday morning, Tom walked into the kitchen unannounced. The usual hustle and bustle greeted him: the clatter of pans, the sharp sizzle of food hitting the grill, and the faint hum of music playing softly in the background. It was a familiar scene, but today, it felt different to Tom. Today, he wasn't just another CEO passing through. He was someone who was there to listen, to understand. The head chef, Marco, looked up from his station in surprise. Tom? What are you doing here? I came to thank you, Tom said with a genuine smile. I know I haven't said it before, but I really appreciate everything you and the team do. You guys are the heart of this place. Without you, none of this would be possible. Marco blinked, clearly taken aback. It was rare for Tom to show up in the kitchen, let alone speak so openly about his appreciation. For a moment, there was silence, then Marco broke into a grin. Thanks, Tom. That means a lot to us. It's easy to forget that people notice the hard work we put in. It's not always glamorous back here. Tom nodded, his eyes scanning the kitchen. I get it. And I'm sorry for not showing it before. You all deserve to be recognized. I'll make sure it doesn't go unnoticed again. He spent the next few minutes chatting with the team, asking about their day, their lives outside of work, and any suggestions they might have for improving things in the restaurant. To his surprise, many of the team members had thoughtful suggestions, simple ideas about streamlining the kitchen or making shifts more manageable. It wasn't just about the food, it was about making the work environment better for everyone. Tom made a mental note of everything they said. Later that afternoon, Tom sat down with his managers. He'd never had a meeting like this before. Usually, these meetings were about targets, sales, and performance metrics. Today, though, he had something else in mind. We need to change the way we run things, Tom began, his voice steady but filled with a new sense of purpose. We're going to put more focus on the people who make this place work. I want to know what each of you needs to feel valued, to do your best work. The managers exchanged curious glances, but none of them spoke up right away. It wasn't often that Tom took such an interest in their day-to-day concerns. Finally, Lisa, the floor manager, spoke up. That's honestly refreshing to hear, she said. It's not just about hitting numbers. We want to feel like we're making a difference. Sometimes it feels like we're just rushing through the motions. Tom nodded. Exactly. We need to remember why we're doing this in the first place. It's not just about profit, it's about creating a community. I want every employee to feel heard, and I want us to all feel like we're part of something bigger than just serving food or cleaning dishes. The conversation continued for over an hour. They discussed ways to improve the work environment, ideas for team-building activities, and ways to make sure that every person felt valued. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt like he was truly listening to his team. He wasn't just talking, he was absorbing everything they had to say, understanding their challenges, and figuring out how to support them. The meeting ended on a high note. Tom promised to implement as many of the ideas as possible, and the managers seemed genuinely excited about the changes ahead. As they left the room, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Something was different, and everyone could feel it. The changes didn't happen overnight, but slowly, day by day, things began to shift. Tom spent more time on the restaurant floor, talking to customers and staff alike. He asked people how their days were going, noticed the small things like when a waiter carried a heavy tray or when a chef worked extra hard to perfect a dish. He made sure to offer a kind word of encouragement, a thank you for their effort. He also made sure to take time to recognize hard work in front of others. He would stand by the kitchen door and give a nod of approval when the chefs turned out an exceptional dish. He would thank the servers in front of the customers, showing everyone how much he appreciated them. It wasn't just about the act itself, it was about creating an atmosphere where appreciation was part of the culture. One evening, Sarah caught him in the hallway after a busy dinner rush. "You've been busy, I see," she said with a playful smile, wiping her hands on her apron. Tom smiled back, feeling a sense of pride. "I've been trying to make a habit of it. I realized that the best way to lead is to show people you care. Not just through words, but through actions." Sarah raised an eyebrow, impressed. "I have to say, I'm glad you're doing this. I can see the difference. The staff seems more motivated, more excited to come in every day." Tom's chest swelled with pride. For the first time in a long time, he could feel the change happening. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that, to him, was everything. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to shift. The employees seemed more connected, more energized. The customers noticed the difference too. They weren't just enjoying their meals, they were enjoying the experience, the warmth, and the care that went into it. Tom didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. He had learned that business wasn't just about numbers, it was about people. And as long as he stayed true to that, he knew he was building something lasting. It was still a work in progress, but for Tom, it was the most important work he'd ever done. It had been nearly 2 months since Tom had decided to make changes to the way he ran his restaurant. The shift in focus from numbers and profits to people and connections had started to show. It wasn't just the employees who felt the difference. Customers noticed too. There was a new energy in the air, something that couldn't be easily put into words, but everyone could feel it. Tom's efforts to recognize and appreciate his staff had created a ripple effect, spreading throughout the restaurant. The kitchen was more organized, the wait staff was more attentive, and even the dishwashers seemed to be carrying a new sense of pride in their work. The small acts of appreciation, whether it was a compliment on a job well done or a simple thank you for working late, had made a world of difference. One afternoon, as Tom was walking through the restaurant, he caught sight of a young waiter named James who had only recently joined the team. James was clearing a table near the window, and Tom noticed that he seemed a little more confident than before. There was a lightness in his step as he worked, a surety that wasn't there when he first started. Tom stopped to watch for a moment, observing how James interacted with the customers. He was polite, engaging, and even managed to make them laugh. When he came back to the kitchen to drop off the dishes, Tom called him over. "James, can I talk to you for a minute?" Tom asked, his voice friendly but serious. James looked a little nervous but nodded, walking over to where Tom stood by the counter. "Of course, Mr. Howard. Is everything okay?" Tom smiled. "Everything's more than okay. I just wanted to say thank you. You've really been doing a great job lately. Your energy and attitude make a real difference here, and I've noticed it." James blinked in surprise, as though he hadn't expected this kind of praise. He looked down, then back up at Tom with a shy smile. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot. I'm really trying to learn and do my best here." Tom nodded, pleased with his response. "Keep it up. The way you're interacting with customers is exactly what we need. You're helping make this place feel more like home for them." James's eyes brightened. "I'll keep trying, Mr. Howard. I really enjoy working here." Tom clapped him on the shoulder, feeling a sense of pride. "I can tell. You're part of the team now, and that matters." As James walked away, Tom couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about the compliment he had given James, it was about seeing the change in him. James wasn't the same shy, uncertain waiter he had been when he first started. He was confident, engaged, and excited to be part of something bigger. And that was exactly what Tom had hoped for when he started making those changes. As the weeks went on, Tom's connection with his team deepened. He continued to make it a point to walk through the restaurant, chat with employees, and thank them for their hard work. There were no more formal, cold staff meetings. Instead, Tom created an open-door policy, where anyone could come to him with ideas or concerns. The atmosphere was different. It was one of openness, respect, and shared purpose. The change in Tom was noticeable to everyone around him as well. His usual high-strung demeanor had softened. He no longer rushed through every task with the urgency of someone trying to meet an invisible deadline. Instead, he took time to listen. He took time to truly see the people around him not just as workers, but as individuals who had lives outside the restaurant, ideas and feelings that mattered. One afternoon, Sarah dropped by the restaurant. She had heard about the changes from some of the staff, and she was curious to see for herself. When she walked in, she immediately noticed the difference. The restaurant felt lighter, brighter. People were laughing, customers seemed more relaxed, and the staff was moving with a sense of purpose. "Hey, Sarah," Tom greeted her with a warm smile as he saw her walking through the door. "Good to see you again." She smiled back, her eyes scanning the room. "It's amazing in here. The energy is different. In a good way." Tom chuckled. It's all about the people. I realized that business isn't just about what you sell, it's about how you make people feel. Sarah raised an eyebrow, impressed. I can tell. You've really created something special here. Tom nodded. I can't take all the credit. The team is the one making it work. But yeah, we've come a long way. I think it's just the beginning, too. Sarah pulled up a chair to sit with him at a small table by the window. She looked around for a moment, soaking in the atmosphere. I'm glad to see you're sticking with it. This is exactly what I was talking about the last time we spoke. When you focus on connection, everything else follows. Tom leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the journey. It feels right. The customers notice the change too. I can see it in their faces. They're not just here for the food anymore, they're here because they feel welcome, because they feel like they matter. Sarah smiled, her eyes gleaming with pride. That's the magic. People want to feel like they're part of something. And that's what you've created. It's not just a restaurant anymore, it's a community. Tom's heart swelled with gratitude. He had been so focused on success for so long that he hadn't realized it wasn't about being the biggest, it was about being meaningful. The connections, the moments of care, and the simple act of seeing the people around him were what mattered most. As Tom looked around the restaurant, he saw more than just tables and chairs, more than just dishes being served. He saw a team working together, a group of people who cared for each other, who shared a common goal. He saw customers who came back not just for the food, but for the experience. He smiled to himself, knowing that this was just the beginning. There was still much work to be done, but for the first time in a long time, Tom felt like he was on the right path. He wasn't just building a business anymore. He was building a place where people felt seen, heard, and appreciated. And that, he realized, was worth everything. It had been almost 6 months since Tom first made the decision to change the way he ran his restaurant. Looking around the room now, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The place no longer just hummed with the sounds of busy workers or the clink of dishes, it vibrated with a different kind of energy. The atmosphere had transformed. It was warm, welcoming, and full of life. Tom stood by the front counter, watching his staff move around with a quiet confidence. The servers greeted customers with genuine smiles, the cooks worked with a rhythm that spoke of practice and pride, and even the dishwashers seemed to walk with a sense of purpose. The entire restaurant felt alive, in the best way possible. But Tom knew that none of this had happened overnight. It had been a slow, sometimes difficult journey. There had been moments when he questioned whether the changes were truly making a difference, times when he wondered if he was pushing his team too hard. But as he stood here now, watching the results unfold, he knew that he had done the right thing. The phone rang, breaking his thoughts. It was Sarah. "Hey, Tom. How's everything going over there?" she asked, her voice warm and upbeat as always. Tom smiled as he picked up the phone. "It's going great. Actually, it's going better than great. I think we've really found our rhythm here. People are happy, staff, customers, everyone. I feel like we're finally living the values I've always wanted to see in this place." "I knew you could do it," Sarah said. "I knew that once you focused on people, the rest would fall into place." "I don't think I could have done it without you," Tom replied. "You were the first person to make me see that it's not all about the numbers. I was so focused on profit and growth that I forgot about the most important part, the people who make it all possible. Now I understand. It's about the team, the connections, and creating a place where everyone feels like they belong." Sarah chuckled softly. "Well, you deserve credit too. You put in the work, you listened, and most importantly, you took action. Not everyone can do that. It's easy to get caught up in the business side of things and forget what really matters." Tom leaned back against the counter, feeling the weight of her words. It wasn't easy. At first, I thought I was just making small changes that wouldn't really add up to anything. But the more I saw my team respond, the more I realized that the smallest gestures really do make the biggest impact. Saying thank you, taking the time to listen, showing appreciation, those things matter more than I ever thought. There was a pause on the other end of the line before Sarah spoke again, her tone thoughtful. I'm glad you're seeing that. I think it's safe to say that you've built something special here, Tom. It's not just a restaurant anymore. It's a place people care about. You've created a culture, not just a business. Tom's heart swelled with pride. I think you're right. It's not just about food anymore. It's about the experience we're offering, the way we treat people, how we make them feel when they walk in here. I think the customers are feeling it too, Sarah added. I've heard so many good things from people who've been coming back. They're not just coming for the food, they're coming for the atmosphere. They're coming because it feels like a community. And that's the secret, isn't it? That's the magic you've created. Tom paused, thinking back to the early days when he was so focused on the next big sale, the next business move. He had missed the real magic. It wasn't about pushing harder, making more money, or expanding the business. It was about making people feel seen and valued. That was what made his restaurant stand out. That was what would make it last. Later that evening, as the dinner rush came to an end, Tom stood in front of the restaurant, gazing out at the city lights. The place was quiet now, the bustle of the day behind him. But Tom could still hear the laughter, the conversations, the clinking of glasses in his mind. It had been a good night, a great night. He thought about the people who had walked through those doors, the regulars who knew his staff by name, the new customers who were just discovering what the place was all about, the families who came in to celebrate, the couples who found a quiet corner to enjoy each other's company. All of them were a part of something bigger now, a community he had helped create. As the last of the staff began to clean up, Sarah walked in, her eyes bright with excitement. I was just talking to a couple of your regulars, she said, a grin on her face. They're saying that they've never seen this place so full of energy. And it's not just the food. It's the vibe, Tom. You've really done it. People love coming here because it feels like home. Tom smiled, his heart full. That's what I've always wanted. I wanted this to be a place where people feel like they matter. And I think we've done that. I know you've done that, Sarah said, her tone warm. You've built something that will last. You've created a culture, and that's the best foundation you could ever ask for. Tom looked around the restaurant one last time. It wasn't just the food that made it special, it was the people. It was the care, the respect, and the love that went into every meal, every interaction, every moment. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was a community. As the lights dimmed and the staff headed home for the night, Tom stood there, feeling a sense of peace settle in his chest. The journey had been long, and at times difficult, but it had been worth every step. This was the true meaning of success. Not in numbers, not in expansion, but in connection. In creating something that made people feel like they were part of something greater than themselves. And as he locked the door behind him, Tom knew that this was just the beginning.